Let me welcome the one and only, the great Dr. Robin L. Smith.
Thank you, my sister Karen. How are you?
Hey, good to see you. Don is here again. Don Calloway, my partner in power, this
Absolutely.
Wellness Wednesday. I don't know where I'm gonna start here because we were talking about vaccines before you came in, and there's still resistance. People going back and forth. Folks are convinced, and then they get, they go down some rabbit hole and tell you, all you need to do is drink water, zinc, and vitamin C, vitamin D, and that's just as good as a vaccine. And I get it. Again, culturally, Black folk in particular, skeptical about the public health system in this country. It has betrayed us on more than one occasion. And now we have this rush through the vaccine, 3 of them, now a 4th coming. We just had the Howard Dean of the Howard Hospital here to talk about the 4th trial that they're going through with another company. And folks are skeptical and nervous. What do you say to them, Dr. Robin?
What it reminds me of is the way that anything that we didn't have access to before, and then someone is excited to offer us a seat at the table, we are not only skeptical, but wonder what must be wrong, whether or not we are, being experimented on, not just the Tuskegee study, which, many of us know about, some still don't. But Karen, you may be aware of what was called the Mississippi appendectomy, and I hope I have the right state, but I will tell you the story. It was Fannie Lou Hamer who said, who was a young woman, an activist. We know who she is. Again, if not, let's check our history because we all need to know who she is. But she was a young woman, a young married woman who was told that she had a tumor that needed to be removed. And so she went to have this tumor removed and came out sterile from having been given an unwarranted, unneeded, and unconsented hysterectomy. She was never able to have children of her own. And so and that was being done to women in the South, in particular, Black women in the South, who were fertile, who wanted to have families, who were, married and partnered, and all of a sudden were written off. And so I mention that because there is, even if people do not know that story, or they do not know about the Tuskegee study where, we were used as guinea pigs, the men there. And I want to say something about the Tuskegee study, because what was promised to those Black men was a proper, honorable burial. Not money, not fame, but when you die of hopefully natural causes, we will pay for you to be buried properly with a headstone. So whether we know that we have been used and exploited and misused, in our DNA, Black people understand that often when someone invites us to the party, particularly a party that we've been excluded from, maybe there is something wrong. And so what I first want to do is honor our skepticism. I'm not shaming or blaming us as a people for wondering if something is up with the offer, if there is something off with the invitation for a vaccination. So I get it. But the reality is that everyone, and I don't mean every human being, but this is not something that has only been offered to us. It is not only something that we are taking. People, white people and all other colors, have already signed up. They've already taken it. So whether or not,
in fact, some are even coming into our neighborhoods,
jumping a lot. That's where I was going. I'm here in Philly, just to remind our tribe here. It's raining, heavy rain right now. And about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we had snow, and there was a line. There's the Black Physicians Alliance, who is headed up, if you have not had her on your show, Dr. Ayla Stanford. She is a serious physician who is in charge of bringing the vaccine to particularly to Black and brown communities here in Philadelphia. What she had happen is there were people coming from outside pretending to be in that community, whether they were, Black or white or brown or yellow, but they were signing up trying to get in on the party. So for sure, what we know is that this is something that people with means are trying to take because they believe it will help them live their best lives. And so I would just suggest that people talk to their physicians about their concerns, about their worries, but not to miss out on the first step in being able to re-enter our lives.
Well, people talk about genetic trauma being passed down. We have substantial genetic memory, and I think that's why people say Tuskegee, and they might not even know that they're invoking these really dark times that are in their genetic memory that we carry around. You're talking about the Mississippi Hysterectomy Project. Absolutely was a real thing, not only in Mississippi, but throughout the South, as Fannie Lou Hamer could attest to. But there is a real history of eugenics, the study of genetically modifying human races, and that usually happens at the exclusion of those who are considered lesser than. So we have the unification, the chemical castration of Black males like Dr. George Washington Carver. You have the Hysterectomy Project. You have forced lobotomies throughout Black America. And this is a very real thing, whether we know the stories or we're not. You carry that generational weight. And I have read up on some of your work. You're brilliant. Congratulations on a wonderful career. But you brought up a phrase, and I've seen you write about it and heard some interviews, that I had never heard before learning from you. And you talked about being emotionally hungry and emotionally anorexic. Can you break that down for the fam?
Yeah, I can, absolutely. And just so we're also clear, if people are going to look up the Mississippi, it's not looking up Mississippi hysterectomy.
Right. That is not one thing.
Appendectomy.
Yeah, no, I love
appendectomy.
It's looking up Mississippi appendectomy.
Appendectomies,
so
forgive
me. I went
me.
in for my appendix.
Yes.
Address.
And they took my whole uterus.
Absolutely. Yes. Came out sterile. So I just want people to look up what the lie was,
yes.
that trapped and took our life force. I mean, when we are fertile, whether it is the castration of Black men or the sterilization of Black women, what does it do? It stops the life flow. And that has been the agenda, for hundreds of years. Let me talk about, and thank you for asking me. First of all, thank you for that acknowledgement, that warm acknowledgement. Let me talk about what it means to be emotionally hungry, and specifically emotional anorexia. It's when we eat crumbs and call it a meal. It is when we are connected in relationships, whether it is at work or at home with our family, our lover, and we say, I'm satisfied, but we're actually starving for real food. And so a part of what has happened to us, particularly as Black people, I don't care who you are and what you have or what you think you have, if you were walking in a Black body, Black body and Black heritage, there is a sense of hunger, a sense of having been starved on the vine. So we're confused about our worth and our value when you are dehumanized, and yet you are told that you were, that all people, men, but all people were created equal. It's a mind game. And so part of our hunger is the confusion around identity. Who am I? Who am I really? And so there's something I call the hungry litany, and I don't have it in front of me or I would read it to you, but I encourage all of us who are here and listening and watching to write a story, maybe, 3 lines or 10 lines that says, I'm hungry for, and I can remember some of what I wrote. I'm hungry for a partner that doesn't feel like a predator.
Mm.
Hungry for, my bright light to shine so that I don't have to dim my light for somebody else to feel big or worthy. And so I think as Black people, we need to think about, instead of I'm good, I've got this, it's really owning, I feel I'm starving to feel good enough. I'm starving to feel intact when I'm assaulted on the left and on the right. And so I feel that emotional anorexia, we think about anorexia, people who are anorexic starving themselves. And I want to make something clear. Eating disorders are a serious thing. Women have them, men have them, kids have them, adults have them. But what's interesting is eating disorders underneath are about power. They are about trying to have power when our power has been taken away, trying to claim power when we've been rendered powerless. And so anorexia, emotional anorexia, is a dialogue that we're having about how do I claim my bigness when people are trying to keep me down.
Take up space, sis.
Yeah, I mean, right, yes.
866-801-8255. I've suffered from delusion my whole life, I guess, because I always thought I was worthy and valuable, even when I might not have been. And, part of that probably can propel you. But is that rational? Is that rational?
Karen, that's interesting you say that maybe you've suffered from delusion. But what I would say is that if you had a sense from the beginning, for whatever reason, that you were worthy and entitled, what I would imagine is if you didn't feel hungry for worthiness, you felt hungry for connection with people who could see you like you saw yourself. So it doesn't mean you weren't hungry, and it does not mean you didn't have emotional anorexia. You just didn't have it in the same corner that I was in, but you had it.
Listen, I love to hear expertise. I love to hear preachers preach. So I'm gonna just be quiet the rest of this. Go ahead.
Quiet. Yeah,
So Dr. Robin, writing it down, Habakkuk says, make it plain on paper, right? Is that part of the process of acknowledgement? Is that part of the process of healing, to write those sentences down about what you're and I feel like people don't have these honest conversations with themselves, because you're right. We've been conditioned to suck it up, buttercup. We're good. I got this is a constant refrain in our community. I got this, because the not got this denotes weakness. And it also, if you have to acknowledge that, then somehow that house of cards will come tumbling down, and people got to keep that up.
Right. Or so we think. Can you go get my hungry for me, please? Thank you. Yes. So
Dr. Robin's got people to go get her hungry.
I better have some help. Isn't that what we're talking about? That if I acted as if I've got this because I ate the message, which is a lie, that I'm supposed to somehow have it together without support. See, having support is an issue of worthiness. Like, I'm thinking about something years ago, I remember someone telling me they had to go to family court about you don't go to family court when things are good, you go when there's a struggle. Yeah. And so they were going around custody, and they said, oh, I'm going to go by myself. And I said, well, no, I asked who's going to go with you. And they said, I'm going alone. I can do this. And I said, I'm sure you can, but why would you? See, a part of worthiness is, yeah, I could do it alone, but if I'm worthy and I want more ease in my life, why would I do something that makes the lifting heavier when I could share it? And so that a piece of this is, if I really feel worthy and if I feel strong, then part of what I do is I let people help me. See, it's a lie that we don't need help. It's also a part of, I believe, our divine birthright to have access to support, access to information, access to, again, as a people, we know how to do it the hard way. My challenge right now is, can you break that shackle and allow yourself to create a new, and I'm going to talk about a new neural pathway. What's that mean? It means our brains are hardwired for what we know to be familiar. So as a people, our brains have been hardwired for hardship, for harshness. So we need to create a new pathway. I didn't say a superhighway, not yet, but a new small little path that says, I deserve to have help and support. And all of those messages that say, that tell us that strong people lift by themselves. If you look at anyone who has accomplished anything, those people all are surrounded by other people who are committed to the elevation of that person or that message. And so it is, and that's kind of the secret. You know, like with college and education, we make it seem like only smart people get through college. Well, we know that's not true. Who gets through college are people who go and keep going until they pass that class, find a tutor, partner with the right set of friends. It doesn't, but the secret is making people, particularly Black and brown people, feel that you have to have the secret sauce to be elevated. That's a lie. It's a lie. We don't want people to know that you don't have to be a genius, and you don't have to be white, and you don't have to be rich. You just have to show up for active duty in your own life and make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who are invested in your elevation.
Community. We need a team. We need a community.
Healthy community.
Healthy community.
Yeah, not just community, because there are a lot of people who are not happy to see you, Karen, or Don, or me doing what we do. So it's not just community, and it is not just family. I have to be around family who wants to see me shine.
But it's important that those people who might not be happy to see you doing your thing, it's important to recognize that that's about them, right? Not about you.
It is about them, and it is about where they are broken. Because you know, I believe that what we see even on the streets here in major cities like Philly and New York, Chicago, and people are saying, oh, they, you know, these Black men, Black boys, because often to me, who, you know, some of these crimes are not happening by Black men, they are happening by with Black boys. But what I believe is that if those boys and men had access to the better life, you're going to tell me that the street life, that hard life, is what they choose? But if their ability to cut drugs properly, which is a math skill, by the way, people don't understand that. I mean, I've talked to people who are selling drugs, and I said, oh, you're good with math. They said, what? I failed math. I said, not if you're cutting those drugs and your life is protected because you don't make a mistake. That's math. That's precision. And so if they understood, and if someone was invested, that that level of precision on the streets cutting drugs could be applied in a chemistry lab, you're going to tell me that that person would not choose, if they had someone invested in them, being a chemist for one of the pharmaceutical companies that are rolling out a vaccine? Of course they would.
And that skill set is applicable across so many different avenues. I mean, that's supply chain distribution, it's sales and marketing, it's logistics, it's math, it's engineering, it's manufacturing.
Yes, it is.
And there are spaces in which people are thriving in any one of those if we decide to create a neurodivergent path about who we elevate and what skill sets we elevate, right?
That's right. And affirming
Yes.
that the person who has that skill set, if they were placed and nurtured, because you can't just take them off the street and put them in college or in a lab without support and education around what the product is, and to show them that they already are doing the job, they just need the skills.
It's talent and
Just need
even
the skills.
genius is everywhere, but opportunity is not, right?
Absolutely. But again, the lie is that genius only lives in a certain place and with certain people. And so we've got to dismantle that. Karen, I also want to go back to the question that you were asking about writing it down and making it plain. What does that do for anyone? And I practice writing things down. I practice journaling. I use that so that I can see myself. I want to remind us that what therapy really is at its best is it's overhearing the conversation in a safe environment that you've been having with yourself all your life, but it wasn't safe enough to listen in to this conversation. So that's what therapy is. It allows us to overhear our own inner conversation. That's what journaling does, allows us to overhear, and as you were asking, and to own what our truth is. So talking about the Bible, in the New Testament, there's a story where Jesus is asking the blind man. He says to blind Bartimaeus, and he says, what is it that you want? And I love this. I often will use this at weddings, and people are like, what is she talking about? I mean, at a wedding, this is not the wedding story. And so the blind man, and I imagine the disciples and all the people around Jesus wondered, what in the world? I mean, of course, he wants his sight. Why would you ask the blind man, what do you want? Maybe because it is important that I can own what I want, that I can articulate, I want my sight. I want my child free of drugs. I want to get rid of the bitterness that's been living in me for the last 25 years. So it's not that God or your higher power or Allah does not know what you need. The question is, do you know what you need? And are you able to articulate it?
Dr. Robin Smith is here. You can follow her at Dr. Robin L. Smith on the Twitters, and go to drrobinsmith.com to see all of the amazing books and works that she has produced. I suspect, Dr. Smith, that most of us are living, in such frenzy that we don't take time to even know what we want. I had this conversation with someone in their 70s, and they had never considered what they actually wanted because they'd been in a marriage for 40 plus years, and it was what the husband wanted, was what they did. From the kind of car that was driven to the furniture that was picked out, it was what the husband wanted. And when he passed away, she didn't know what she actually liked and what she actually wanted. And when she was asked, she couldn't really answer it because it was never asked, well, what do you want? So that question is so powerful that we ask of ourselves. But what happens if you don't know because you've never considered? How do you know what you want, Dr. Robin, when you've never known what you've wanted?
Yeah, well, what you're saying is, how do you make room for yourself when you've been squeezed out by all the other selves that were in your life and in your space? How do you become a self? I say giving birth to the self. And a part of that would be even to write down, I don't know what I want, but I'm curious about what I want. I've always wanted what my mother wanted, or my father wanted, or, you know, my neighbors wanted. So I don't know what I want. I think about the movie The Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. And there's a theme in that movie that she is engaged multiple times, and each man she's engaged to, they ask, what's your favorite, what kind of eggs do you like? And so she likes the eggs. Well, it's scrambled with, you know, Ralph, and it's poached with Joe, and, you know, with Josiah, it is over easy, because she had no sense about what she liked herself. And so not until things fell apart in that movie did she experiment with the eggs, and she learned that she didn't like any of the eggs except for one that was not even known to her. And I think that this woman you're talking about, I remember, Karen, meeting and knowing a woman. I was walking on the street with my mother here in Philadelphia, and we learned that this woman's husband, they had been married for 70 years. And my mother said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear. And I said, I am too. And she said, oh, don't feel bad for me. She said, this is the first time in my life, and I don't know how much time I have left, but it's the first time in my life that I didn't have to think about anyone except me. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I do know whatever I'm going to do, it's going to be all about me. And so I think for women and men, there are many men as well who really struggle to know, not what does someone else want for me, but what would satisfy my own soul. And we're also afraid because people will say, well, what if I find out I want something I can't have? I said, well, what if you do find out that you want something or someone that you cannot have? What does that mean? And well, I'll be sad. And I said, well, you may be sad, but you'll be alive, as opposed to this kind of walking dead on automatic pilot. And so I think in this moment, what we're really inviting people to do is to wake up and to show up and to grow up and to rise up. I mean, that's my equation for how I work through things, how I coach people through things: to wake up, to show up for active duty, to grow up, and to rise up. You can't rise up if you haven't done those other stages.